for a lot of us, when we hear the word faith, what comes to mind? Miracles. 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 And I mean, you're not necessarily wrong, but that's not all there is to it. But the problem with spiritual subjects that have a natural consequence is that more often than not, they are the ones that we are more likely to teach the most amount of error. Because everybody wants to teach from their experience. So maybe, for instance, there's a man who trusting God for something financially. And maybe as of this morning, he was trusting God. By evening, he got the results. You know what the man says? He opens his Bible and sees Hebrews 11 verse 1. Now faith is. So he comes out and says, listen to me. Faith is now. Look at your neighbor and say, now. Now. So your faith is now. What he ceases to forget is that having said now faith is, in that same chapter, he now tells you, for instance, about Abraham, who did not have his child until after 25 years. He talks to you about the rest of the patriarchs of faith and said, these all died in faith, having not received the promise. So how does that sound like now faith is? Faith is not now. Faith is when God says. Faith is not about the results. It was never about the results. If faith is about the results, there are some results that are not good. Don't you get it? In Hebrews 11, when he was talking about the patriarchs of faith, he said there were some who were killed, and those who by faith also suffered the losing of their goods. So you begin to realize the point of faith is not the result, it's the man who ends up on the other side. You have not understood Abraham's story if you think the whole point of waiting 25 years was Isaac. No. The whole point was a man who learns to trust God in the middle of it all. Because if faith is all about the results, then you always have an excuse not to choose faith and go for the other way. If it is about getting the car, maybe you don't always have to trust God for it. I'm not saying this is not faith, but maybe you can take a loan and pay it back. But there are certain times when the Lord just tells you, don't do that. Trust me for it. Do you really think the point is the car? No! The point is that when you have the car, the other thing you also have is that you are now a man who has trusted in God for something. That the next time you need to trust God for something, you can do it upon the basis of the fact that you have trusted God in the past. Listen, the reason Abraham could take Isaac to go and be killed was because he had waited for God for 25 years. I'm trying to make you understand why that thing seems too big for you, but it's not big for Abraham. You need to understand, this is a man who has waited 25 years for this child. Chances are it will not be as hard for him. So when God says go and kill this child, particularly when God has told him, in this child will your seed be called, no problem, he's going to raise him up. You need to understand, a man who can believe for 25 years that a seed is still going to come, I can believe God despite what is happening around him for 25 years. Chances are it might not be as hard as it is for you, for that man to believe that God will raise the child from the dead. The reason it's a big deal to you is because you have not been on the journey of Abraham's faith. And so this is the reason. Let me tell you something. Everything you get by faith or lose by faith is a testimony. Because it's not so much the result as it is what you have become or who you have become. Are we together, everybody? Oh, thank you, Lord Jesus. Thank you, Lord Jesus.